Dear Julie, ladies and gentlemen, dear faculty, families, friends, dear board members, dear staff, dear graduates of the EMPA class of 2018. Welcome to our graduation. Today we graduate 26 students, and I just spoke to someone who was a graduate from last year, and I asked, so now you've been away for 1 year, how does it feel when you look back at this experience in the EMPA program? And she looked at me and said, well, I don't know what life will bring, but this was the best year of my life. If that's the standard, I think we can be pretty happy. I'm not sure it applies to everyone, but for today, at least pretend. We are very, very proud of what you've done. You've worked hard. At your age, it's not only you working hard, but also your families, children, the community, your employers. That's the big difference between an executive degree and the normal student degree. And when you walk outside this room through the cafeteria, you see that this class is incredibly creative, driven by research and then putting it on paper. These posters out there are just amazing. And we've just spent time walking through them yesterday night. You had the exhibit, and it's just a proof of how active you have been. When I started to think about this graduation, and you know I've just more or less been appointed president yesterday, I tried to think about who would be the right graduation speaker for you. And I started to look back. Many of you started in September 2016. And I looked at a poll, and Julie's perhaps not entirely pleased to hear this story, nor are some other Americans in the room, but on 7th of September 2016, there was a poll in the New York Times putting the probability of an election of Hillary Clinton at 83%. You know what happened 2 months later. It's a lesson about the force, the power of numbers, statistics, and the mistakes we might all make in policy making and trying to predict the future. For those of you who were here yesterday night when I had my inaugural speech, for me, a public policy needs to be a radically forward-looking place, future-oriented place. If we look back and we train people for the past, it doesn't work. We need to look into the future and try to identify what we should teach executives, normal students, doctoral students, so that they can be successful in the future. By definition, we don't know today whether we got our job well done or not, because our judgment is today. Come back in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, become part of the Hertie alumni community of now more than 1,500 students. Stay in touch with us, give back what you've learned here, and tell future student groups what you should have learned and what Hertie perhaps didn't teach you, or what you learned here and what you could use 5 years, 10 years down the road. We tried our best, and this is the Hertie faculty, this is all the adjuncts, the guests that were working with you. I would like to thank our Dean of Executive Education, Andrea Römmele, sitting here, Susan Park-Gessner, who runs the program, and Robert Czech, who is sitting there. They made your life, hopefully, this best year in your life, as we said, pretend. And I hope I can be speaking for all of you when thanking them. Later on, Adrian will... Later on, Adrian Sonder will be the student speaker in today's meeting. Now, let me come back to one of the main parts next to your graduation ceremony, our graduation speaker of today. I mentioned earlier on, I thought about what happened in the past 2 years. And the most dramatic change is clearly what happened with the transatlantic relationship. what happened in the US, and from there went everywhere. I said yesterday, in the past the WTO used to deal with student groups protesting outside, sometimes violently. Today the WTO is no longer attacked by students, it's attacked by the US president. And that's a very, very different setting. And so we thought about someone who the ideal profile was someone young, someone dynamic like you, someone with extensive policy experience, ideally knows the Oval Office from inside, someone who knows Germany, understands the transatlantic relationship. And this woman is sitting here in the first row. Julie Smith has all the characteristics I've just described to you. After going to high school, and I still remember you when we talked about this in Munich, she just somehow ended up in Germany and stayed here for quite some time. And so she knows Germany extremely well. Then she returned to the US, had a mind-blowing career in the US administration, and ended up as a US Deputy National Security Advisor under the Obama administration, as a National Security Advisor in that position to the Vice President, Joe Biden. And so that's where you want to be in those times. I'm not sure, Julie, that when you think back to September 7th, 2016, you thought you would be sitting here today. You probably thought you might be elsewhere. But if there's one upside to what happened, then it's that you are here today. We're delighted to have you as graduation speaker today. I'm thrilled. You will now share your views, experiences with us. Julie, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Henrik, for that very kind introduction. And I'm sure the best scenario is for me to be standing right here with all of you today and not in a stuffy meeting room somewhere in the US government. Although I can't say that it's better for our society in general, but that's a subject for another day. It's an honor to be here at the Hertie School of Governance today and to address the 2018 graduating class of the Executive Masters in Public Administration. The Hertie School of Governance is an institution that actually I've been following pretty closely since it was founded 15 years ago. And I've always been impressed by its innovative curriculum, the emphasis on practical experience, all of the professors that find their way to this great institution, and of course all the students that come from around the world. Let me start first by congratulating all of today's graduates. Very well done. Congratulations on your degree from such a fine institution and such a distinguished program. I had the pleasure of reading through your bios in recent days. They were all sent to me, and I took the time to sit down and read through all of them. And it's clear that you're a very impressive group of young professionals. You've set yourself apart already professionally. Many of you already have 2 or 3 other advanced degrees, and you're clearly on your way to do great things in the future. Now, that's just what I know from reading your bios, but even without reading your bios, I know a couple of other things to be true. First, you're a group of risk takers. You've never opted for the easy route. You didn't stay in your hometown to study, to work, to settle down. Irrespective of your particular field or area of specialization, you have lived, studied, and worked abroad. And you've just completed a degree in English in this wonderful city of Berlin. Making choices like that to leave your hometown, to get a degree in a foreign language, to work in another country, takes courage and a willingness to step into the unknown. I also know that all of you love learning. As I said, most of you already have other advanced degrees. And at a time in life when many of your peers no doubt feel like they are long done with school, you decided to return to school, to take classes in economics, in management, and leadership. And on top of it, you selected a program that requires you to write a thesis, something that would have sent at least a few applicants running in the other direction. I also know that you're all multitaskers extraordinaire. Some of you have completed this program while working full or part-time. I know that there are parents in the group and managing family responsibilities. Some of you have also seized on opportunities to take courses at other universities across the continent. And not everyone has the discipline, the flexibility, the time management skills to do just that. But you do. In short, you're a remarkable group of young professionals, mid-career professionals, clearly on your way to do great things. So what's my message for such an extraordinary group and very impressive group? Well, I'm going to be honest with you, 5 or 10 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I would have used this address to focus on leadership, since you've all established yourself as leaders in your field, and you just completed a program that focuses specifically on questions of leadership. I would have drawn from some of my own experiences, as well as the lessons that I've learned in working for some of America's top national security professionals. I would have stressed the importance of managing up and managing down. I would have offered some suggestions on how to best inspire and support the people who work for you and work with you. I would have stressed the importance of finding balance in your life and avoiding the trap of putting too much emphasis on your professional life at the expense of your personal life. And I would have put special emphasis on innovation, not just in what you do, but in how you do it. But I'm going to be very honest with you right now and tell you that those lessons and that kind of advice feel pretty small to me. They feel small because of the transformative moment that we find ourselves in today. We are living in an age of disruption where the structures and the systems that worked so well for us in recent decades are cracking from outside pressure, from internal forces, or both. Populist winds are blowing on multiple continents. Authoritarians are doing their very best to attack the democratic values we hold dear, and people around the globe are losing their faith in the institutions that would normally help us weather the storm. So I want to spend a little time today talking about that storm and what I think it means for all of the graduates with us here today. And I want to start by talking about the issue of public trust. And I saw that on a poster out in the hall a few minutes ago. Public trust, as you may all know, in national governments remains at near historic lows, both on my side of the Atlantic and on your side of the Atlantic. In my own country, the United States, there's an organization called National Election Study, and they began asking Americans about their trust in national government in the late 1950s. At that time, about 3/4 of Americans trusted the federal government to do the right thing, most of the time or all the time. Since then, public trust in the government has dropped significantly. And for the past decade, the share of people in the United States saying that they can trust the government always or most of the time has not surpassed 30%. Now, this isn't just an issue in the United States. I've taken some time in recent weeks to look at similar polls in OECD countries. And on average, citizens in OECD countries have less confidence in their national governments today than they did 10 years ago. In some OECD countries, Finland, Belgium, South Africa, to name just a couple, confidence in national government is actually plummeting. And I'll give you an example. In 2004 in South Africa, 66% of the public had confidence in national government. By 2014, it had dropped to 34%, where it sits today. Now, declining public trust isn't limited to national governments. We see public trust also declining in other institutions, in NGOs, in courts, in banks, and the media. And that's just at the national level. You can also take a look at public trust in the alphabet soup of international institutions that serve as the foundation of the liberal order, whether you're talking about the EU, NATO, the OSCE, or the UN, and you can find similar trends in those institutions. According to the Eurobarometer, the percentage of Europeans that said in 2004 that they trusted the European Union was around 60%. By 2015, that number had dropped to just 36%, although I will note that trust increased just a few points when that same question was asked last year. 42% of Europeans now say they support the European Union. Now that's better than the 36% we saw in 2015, but it's certainly not the 60% that Europe witnessed a little over a decade ago. Now, switching to the UN, Secretary General Guterres has spoken many times about declining trust in the institution that he heads up. Just a few weeks ago, he pressed UN member states to pay their dues, warning that this year's cash shortfall is far worse than in past years. And as he did that, Guterres speculated that declining support for the United Nations, not just in the United States, but actually in many countries around the world, might be one of the reasons that countries are so late in paying their dues this year. Now, switching to NATO, public support for NATO isn't declining quite as fast as it is in some other institutions, perhaps due to its ties to the military, which continues to benefit from high levels of trust on both sides of the Atlantic. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that we are starting to see some cracks in NATO's armor. I've spent the last year traveling across the United States to engage new audiences on U.S. foreign policy and the transatlantic relationship. And engaging Americans in places like Salt Lake City, Tampa, and Pittsburgh, I have regularly encountered disparaging remarks on the left and the right about NATO that mirror those made by President Trump. NATO's obsolete, they tell me. Europe isn't paying their fair share, others have said. NATO doesn't benefit the United States in any concrete way, they've told me. And I worry about the damage those arguments will ultimately do to NATO's public image in the United States and Americans' faith in the alliance. I also worry about the views of a new generation of foreign policy hands in the United States and Europe that have little to no recollection of the Cold War and why NATO was invented in the first place. But that's a subject for another day's lecture. In any case, my point here is that whether you're looking at public trust in national governments or national institutions like courts and banks or international institutions, the trend lines are all pointing in a troubling direction. So the question is, what accounts for this shift? What's the cause behind this decline in public trust in these institutions? And of course, as you all well know, there are many causes: economic recessions, political scandals, declarations of war, terrorism, or an institution's failure to adequately cope with a crisis or a catastrophe. And here one could cite the Japanese government's handling of the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the resulting drop in public trust that followed that catastrophe. Now, some experts, like the economist Justin Wolfer, also credit enhanced transparency as a contributing factor to our collective lack of trust in government. Citizens today have more information, more knowledge about how government works than their counterparts did many, many decades ago. Now, one would think that that increased level of information and all of that transparency would actually build trust in institutions, but that's not necessarily the case. In some cases, increased transparency in these institutions has revealed their inefficiencies and, in some cases, corruption, leading folks to the conclusion that a particular government agency or multilateral institution isn't fit for the job. And there's another problem with enhanced transparency. Our inboxes, everyone in this room, they're all now overflowing with information that spans the full spectrum from fact to fiction and everything that falls in between. Misinformation, sometimes coming from within our own societies and sometimes coming from outside our own societies through our adversaries, looking to shape our national discourse, has left citizens struggling to identify what is good journalism rooted in facts and what's merely a ploy full of falsehoods. That uncertainty about what's fact and what's fiction, and the accompanying loss of trust in institutions is shaking the very foundation of our democracies today. Without an agreed-upon set of facts, and without confidence in national and international structures, it's virtually impossible for us to engage in rational discourse and chart a common way forward. So as people worry about the future, they worry about their jobs, globalization, migration, and a long list of other challenges, what are we finding? We're finding that some of them are drawn towards populist candidates that promise to take the authority away from the institutions that these individuals no longer trust. And that disruption can have tremendous appeal, as we've seen both in the United States, in my country, and throughout Europe. Disruption can feel like a tonic, particularly when you believe that the system, however you define the system, is somehow leaving you behind or has failed to meet your needs. Now, while some level of disruption can be healthy, you all know it's a term that's used in a very positive light in Silicon Valley, it can also come at a cost, triggering a liberal slides that erode our democratic values and the rule of law. The question now is, how do we acknowledge some of the legitimate concerns of our fellow citizens without bringing down and disrupting the entire system? How do we restore public trust in so many national and international institutions that, at least in my mind, need to be reformed and not destroyed? These are some of the challenges that sit at the heart of the transatlantic relationship today. So the question is, what does this mean for all of you freshly minted graduates? Well, it means you now need to set your sights just a little bit higher. You need to do more than to be leaders in your field, something I'm confident you're already doing or are this close to achieving. You need to be leaders in society and in your communities more broadly. That means you're going to have to continue to rely on those multitasking skills that I mentioned at the beginning, in addition to pursuing a rewarding career, either in the public or private sector. I'm asking you today to consider doing the following 7 things. First, ground yourself in the truth. Work to identify trustworthy outlets and take the necessary time to determine if all of your sources are indeed rooted in facts. More importantly, call out those that are deliberately misleading others. You may know that Muslim refugees in Germany are not, in fact, demanding that the city of Munich ban Oktoberfest, as one social media post claimed in 2015. But what will you do when you hear a neighbor or a friend promote a post like that? Second, define your values and prepare to defend them. In the past, many of us may have felt like that was the job of our elected leaders, but your elected leaders now need your help. This isn't a time to be passive. This moment in time requires us all to take religious, racial, and social divisions head on, and it requires all of us to find our voice. Third, avoid groupthink. Social media, as you all know, has a way of trapping us in this echo chamber where we're all surrounding ourselves with like-minded souls. If you are on social media like I am, often too much, I urge you to very deliberately follow people who disagree with you. Better yet, get off social media and meet with people who disagree with you. Fourth, be a leader in civility and decency. In today's hyper-partisan atmosphere, particularly in Washington, but not just in Washington, we're seeing tempers flare, insults fly, and in some cases, violence break out. I therefore encourage you to remain passionate about your views, your belief systems, but also urge you to police and check your language and be careful not to cross the line. Fifth, find new ways to invest in your communities, as I'm sure many of you are already doing. And don't limit your contributions to your professional life. Find other ways to connect with your community. Work with kids or the elderly, start a book club, organize a neighborhood picnic. And sixth, serve as a translator. You guys are in a unique position of straddling many different worlds. different cultures, and different fields. I want you to think about how you can serve as a translator between those worlds. Maybe you happen to have a deep technical knowledge from the private sector that an NGO down your street would really find helpful. Maybe you happen to have a unique understanding of two cultures of two religions that are at cross purposes right now. Maybe you can help bridge the gap between the private and the public sector on national security challenges like cybersecurity. And maybe you could share your own personal experience working at the UN or for a government agency with a neighbor or an uncle or a friend who's lost faith in those institutions. Finally, assuming you're all advocates of the transatlantic relationship, and I hope you all are, please don't fall into the trap of defending the status quo, something that I've caught myself doing on a few occasions. It's not enough to say that the old order, the old structures worked most of the time. It's also possible to defend the liberal order and advocate for change all at the same time. If we want the order to prevail, we need to work to prepare it for a new era. We need to have difficult conversations about the post-manufacturing economy, the impact of artificial intelligence and other disruptive technologies, about preserving our values while also being more inclusive, and about globalization. I'm counting on all of you to lead those conversations. I'm counting on the skills that got you to this institution in the first place, your willingness to take risks, your adaptability, your resilience, your intellectual curiosity, and your drive. So go home, celebrate today's major milestone, but then jump to it. We've got work to do. Your colleagues need you, your communities need you, society needs you. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.
President Enderlein, dear Mrs. Smith, faculty and staff members, friends and family members, my fellow graduates. When I started to think about this speech, I asked myself one core question. What should I talk about? To get some ideas, I did what most of us do almost every day. I asked Google. What I found was a selection of commencement speeches and graduation speeches, focusing on topics such as striving for success, the importance of risks, and the lessons that can be learned from failure. Some of the quotes I came across included, "Everyone gets knocked down. What matters is whether you get back up and keep going. Hillary Clinton. Take your risks now. As you grow older, you become more fearful and less flexible." Another one. Reading these quotes made me wonder, would these quotes be right for my audience? The short answer is no. This can already be explained by the fact that the average executive MPA student is at least, often, 36 years old and has 10 years of professional experience. In other words, many of my colleagues have already taken major risks, whether they are professional or private ones. They've already experienced failure and always kept going. That's why we are all here today. That is also the reason why I want to take another approach. I want to address 3 questions. First, how has our time here at Hertie influenced us? Second, that is connected with it, why does this program matter? And third, why did we put all the efforts into this program? How has our time here at Hertie influenced us? Before I began writing this speech, I asked some of my colleagues to summarize their experience at Hertie or send me an anecdote. And just like in student life, some stuck to their deadlines, some didn't, and others didn't submit at all. In other words, the Hertie assignment experience. I will get started with a contribution of a fellow student, which made me smile. Just some keywords. A lot of Einstein coffee and soup. 19 different hotels. Moody mornings. Underexplored library. Brezel. Asian and Bavarian cuisine. A failed attempt at dating a classmate. Flughafen Tegel. Writing essays on the flight back. Weil wir dich lieben. Increased self-confidence. And sometimes ungovernable School of Governance. This description is perfect because it is authentic. It highlights the many personal aspects that are connected with our study experience. It also shows one characteristic of our EMPA program. It is personal. I've never experienced in my academic life such a personal environment. I remember sitting in a skills course on conflict management, where some of my colleagues talked openly about past private conflicts, in class, in front of the lecturers. I was amazed and felt so blessed by this openness. It also motivated me, on a personal level, to be more open. It was in those situations I felt the main purpose of this program. We are here to connect. I do not only mean connecting on LinkedIn or Facebook. We are here to connect. Life is about people, and our EMPA program is about the people who come here to study, teach, and experience. We all come from different countries with diverse backgrounds and various interests. But we came here to connect with each other. Without a doubt, I can say that the greatest discovery of my study experience was the people I met. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. This aspect leads me to the next question. Why does this program matter? Without a doubt, the program matters for many reasons. These include fostering personal development, transmitting skills, and providing excellent teaching and academic insights. Those 3 reasons are essential ones for me and many of my fellow students. However, the program strongly lives from the personal environment, the characters, and the passion of the people. Without these aspects, the program would not matter to the same extent. And now we come to the last question. Why did we put all these efforts into this program? Many people think there's an easy answer to this question. People say they want to move to their next career level. I don't think so. A next level is often the result of our activities, our efforts, but it does not explain why we do it. At least this is true for the people whom I met during this program. To illustrate this point, I want to use the contribution of another colleague. He summarized in some keywords his study experience. Happiness about academic input, inspiration through colleagues and activities, the good feeling that comes with being back in the library, a fascination with the Hertie atmosphere, open discussion cultures, and lecturers discuss issues with us on a one-to-one level. And last one, disunity regarding different duties, family, job, studying. Let's take the aspect disunity. I suppose that we all had this feeling from time to time with regard to our obligations. However, some people have had this more than others. Some colleagues have life partners, often in long-distance relationships. Others are parents. Here I especially want to mention one mother with 3 kids who managed to finish the 1-year full-time program in an impressive way. In their professional lives, my colleagues occupy leadership positions in both private and public organizations. Some students regularly fly in from all over Europe. One current student at Hertie School is even flying in from Tanzania each time. Some of you will ask now, why do these people do the program then and even pay for it? I tell you why. Because we are passionate. We are passionate about what we do and not who we are. And obviously, we love public policy. When I recently attended the Hertie workshop in Brussels, I talked with a colleague who has been working in the development sector for more than a decade. We were standing at the Luxembourg Square, which is known to be the after-work place for networking. Believe it or not, I did not even get started to network with other people. He was talking non-stop about his activities and the work within the development sector. It was impressive and it inspired me. I felt this guy really loves what he's doing. He is passionate about it. This kind of passion has grown during our time at Hertie. And it was also influenced and triggered by external events. In this context, please allow me a political note. I started with my cohort in September 2016. Brexit had just occurred a few months ago. Trump had not yet been elected, and populists had not taken over yet the public debate. These events played a crucial role in our classes and in our private discussions. Some of us felt scared, some of us were shocked, some of us were angry. Most importantly, we felt addressed. We felt the need to do something that requires passion. I want to emphasize the importance of this required passion by the following quote from John Bon Jovi. Nothing is as important as passion. No matter what you want to do with your life, be passionate. The world doesn't need any more gray. On the other hand, we can't get enough color. Mediocrity is nobody's goal, and perfection shouldn't be either. We will never be perfect, But remember these 3 Ps, and not public sector Ps. These 3 Ps, passion, persistence, that leads to possibility. Passion and persistence will also be necessary to tackle the challenges I just mentioned. Those challenges show us that we need to act. Our Hertie experience has helped us to prepare for these tasks. It will also help us to generate new ideas and mobilize people. It must be understood as a toolkit that must be used and constantly further refined. If we use our Hertie experience in this way, then we can make a real difference. However, before we go to our next challenges, we want to celebrate our graduation today. For this purpose, I find it is an important part of a graduation speech to say thank you. In the name of my fellow students, I want to say thank you to our families and life partners who supported us all the way. They were our rocks and often kept us going when we felt we could no longer see the end of the tunnel. We also want to say thank you to our friends and all those people who supported us during difficult times and who cheered us up. Finally, we want to say thank you to the faculty. And I want to say a very special thank you to the staff of our program. You always try to support us in the best way possible. I know that this has not always been so easy in the last year. This also had to do with the changes that the school is undergoing at the moment. But you made the best out of it. One has to keep in mind the administration has to take care of all kinds of affairs. I just want to mention the provision of tea bags in this context during the courses. In other situations, they have to run behind the students to increase the number of student evaluations, also not easy. I want to make a point here. We value the contribution of the program administration. They are an integral part of this program, part of our study experience, and also part of the success we are celebrating today here. Therefore, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow graduates, I want to end my speech with a short sentence from a fellow student describing our journey. It was a journey with ups and downs alongside beautiful people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for this very touching speech. Julie, also thank you very much for your very inspiring commencement speech. And it's very difficult for me because for two reasons. First of all, there's nothing really I can add. And the second reason, Hendrik, I won't be forward-looking. This is a kind of sentimental moment for me, and it's also a very sentimental moment for my team. And of course, it's a very, very special day for you outgoing graduates, a very special day for the incoming cohort, very special day for your families, but also a very special day for all of us here at Hertie, for the whole Hertie community. And I think one thing I can add now is to give you a sense of what this group actually was about, or is about. To have another look at the group which came here 2 years ago to start a new program, our EMPA. It's a program that is actually very visible now on the European scene. We're starting our 11th year. We started in 2008. We now have 57 students enrolled and 216 alumni, and you will very shortly be part of that group. We are, and this is one of the things that makes our program so special, and I felt that again yesterday and today in the classroom, we're a truly international gang. This year's graduates have moved to Berlin for the one-year program from South Korea, the US, the Netherlands, Albania, and the Czech Republic. Others have flown in for their courses from Accra, Brasilia, Bucharest, Paris, Geneva, Brussels, New York, Vienna, and other great places. But you not only came from very different parts of the world, you also have very, very different backgrounds. Some of you are trained engineers, lawyers, journalists, economists, and quite a few have degrees in one of the plentiful domains of the social sciences. And it's always such a pleasure to sort of engage in discussions with you. I remember this morning we had this discussion about yesterday's New York Times article, and getting all these different perspectives was very enriching. Today, we also welcome 22 new EMPA students. With 41% Germans, this is, again, a truly international class. We are excited to welcome professionals from countries such as the US, the UK, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Egypt, Vietnam, Zimbabwe, making the EMPA network even richer. While the cohort is as diverse as every year, the biggest group of students now come from the non-profit sector and the non-German administration this year. It is great news for us that our international public administration program continuously attracts from all sectors and many countries worldwide. As a member of the faculty, I must say I was always fascinated and interested in your motivation to do the EMPA, to go back to school again, something you actually have successfully left behind. Whenever I have engaged in discussions about this with you, and we had very, very many, I admired your wish to think outside of the box. Your wish to connect to other disciplines, ideas, to different sectors, to reach out, your drive and your inspiration for changing things. And you are a very, very distinguished group, a group I admire, the faculty, my colleagues admire, above all for your curiosity, for your intrinsic motivation to go back to school, for your hunger and eagerness to learn more, for the hunger to truly understand more and to make change happen. All of you, and we just heard that very vividly from Adrian, have invested tremendous time in your coursework, in your assignments, in reading, in writing, in discussing, in asking questions, and challenging us in so many other and wonderful ways. And believe me, and believe my fellow colleagues, we also learned a lot from you. By coming here, by coming to the Hertie School, by giving up or at least putting on hold your successful jobs, you made uncertainty your friend. And at my age, and I think I can say that, you have learned and experienced that uncertainty actually never goes away. Something you actually hope for in your early 20s, that you pass through university and here is your degree and your way is set, but it's not like that. The true art is if you want to challenge and change matters, if you want to think outside of the box, you have to make uncertainty your friend. It has to be your permanent companion. And that companion makes you go out as a motivator, as a changer, as a bridge builder, and that's what you are doing now. But don't forget, don't become a stranger around here. Come back, connect to the alumni community, something Henrik has pointed out, to live the Hertie spirit, connect to Hertie love, a hashtag you see here, and we hope to see a lot of you again next year. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the wonderful EMPA team, which has been a true pleasure to work with, and I am sure that the students agree on that, and I want to express a deep thank you to Susan, Robert, Alyssa, and Annika, and I think you all deserve a big round of applause. And I think you also share that with you, we probably come to the most important part of this afternoon, of today's agenda, and that's the conferment of your so very well-deserved degrees. And I would like to ask President Enderlein to the stage, and we'll get started. Pavel Bobek. Martha Brenner. Martin Chudai. Dominik Ehrentraut. Torben Frank. Sarita Gomez. Peter Guldenmont. Christine Heinrich. Veronika Hopfgartner. Katalin Kasai. Anna Kemlein. Ernani Kuhn. Robert Kusche. Anna-Caroline Müller. Raswan Muntono. Afanbi Niba. Adrian Sonder. Orchidea Xaferay.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I ask the entire class of 2018 here on stage, and we will take a few pictures. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our graduating class of 2018. I I would like to thank, while you take the pictures, I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank Julie. And the good news is, Julie will stay in Berlin for the next academic year as Richard von Weizsäcker Fellow at the Bosch Foundation. You're part of the family, Julie. Come back whenever you want. It's a pleasure to have you here. Adrian, thanks for your speech. And before you throw up your scarves, we will. No, throw up. Yeah. Julie and I will come with you. I wanted to invite all of you now to the reception. We will have a reception. You leave the Hertie School. You walk to Friedrichstraße, turn to your right, walk downwards, and then 50 meters, I think, to your right is the entrance of the Q Club in a small courtyard. There will be people indicating that, and we will have a fantastic afternoon, and probably you will have a fantastic evening and night and morning and weekend, but do come back. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful afternoon. Thank you. Julie.
Everybody can see me? Okay. And give me a smile. Okay, already? Okay. And now, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.